So hi everyone, I'm Mario. I am QA at ThoughtWorks. Feel a bit strange with the whole thing here. I think NSA does this way more comfortable. Yeah, so what I'm going to talk today is the UI testing in Scope 7. I've been working for ThoughtWorks like a year now, and in my current project we are developing iOS app, and when I came to the project, there was basically no UI test. There was the team had played with a bit of Frank, which is a UI framework. But besides that, there was basically no test, and they would just like kind of explore this functionality. So part of my work at the beginning was actually exploring what tools were available for test automation, and trying them and see how they could work for a project. I had previously no experience with testing mobile applications, so I would just basically jump into the topic and start to try things. At the beginning, try KIF, for instance. Didn't really work so well for us. There was, as I said, Frank, which is also... So there, Appium, which is basically using a framework from Xcode or from Apple, and on top builds with some graphical user interface. But with S7, Apple make a big announcement that your user interface test should be way more simple. Well, that's the promise, at least. And so I decided to have a look on what is coming and share with you some insights from what I have found. So, but first I'm going to start with like what is how I see actually, or what is for me testing UI testing. And I wrote this testing by simulating the final user interaction. It was basically testing against the graphical user interface based on the user interactions. So, like as you know, unit tests or other type of integration tests, other type of headless tests, this basically need to hit directly the graphical user interface. So, and now, why should I automate? And what, in general, should I test UI functional test? So I am the first one who actually can ask direct questions to the audience from this talk. So I was, how many of you are actually testing regularly your code and writing tests? In general. Yeah, and some. And in the UI, writing UI tests? In KIF? Ah, okay, cool. So as far as my jobs as QA is also to be advocate for to encourage developers to write tests and to improve the quality. I think I have done it so well that Jan has started to go all over the country and start meetups, testing meetups. So I think I have done a good job doing that. And well, why testing? I think the previous talks were already very good introduction on why we should test. I will try not to repeat that. I think you already should recognize the benefit of testing. But why testing the UI? Well, basically because that's what the user at the end does, and that there was the business rely at the end. UI tests for me should focus on core business functionality. That means you don't want to test everything on the UI. You have to decide what is going there. Normally, I'm advocating not to have so many functional tests. Sometimes I even have to fight with developers. Developers like when they find that it's easy to write many UI tests. Later in my experience, they become very flaky and hard to maintain. They don't provide much information sometimes, so this false positives. So basically, when you have to decide what's to be tested on at that level, you have to have a look at your business model and what is driven the business of the application. So if you have a website, for instance, in Amazon, if you go to Amazon website, you have a small links at the bottom of the page where you can, for instance, ask for information about a career in Amazon. This is very small links, and you probably will not test that in a UI level, right? So if you want to test this functionality, you probably will do it in a unit test, an integration test, but since this is that small, and that at the bottom of the page probably is not very important. But you would like to test and to have confidence that your functionality is always working, for instance, for buying, right? So if you, or the search functionality in Amazon. That's something like you would put in a functional test you add, besides the test you should already have written for unit tests or for integration tests. Because if that breaks, then your whole business is broken, right? So you really want to have confidence that this is working all the time. So it is worth to invest then more time in writing tests for that and going through the pain that can cause us to have functional tests for that. So you have to keep the trade-off of what you're doing. Then other characteristics, I think they need to be based on real user interaction. It means you need to think about how the user actually see the application and try to write your test from that perspective. Normally, when you're doing unit tests, you should also do that, but it's harder to keep that picture because you're writing a very functional level, so what your code is written. So in the UI test, you should put a place of the user and think about maybe use some tools like user journeys, so what you can maybe you have information about that. You can kind of write what is actually the user is expected to do with the application, or you can use personas. So kind of profile your user and driven by that, write what you're actually going to test. You should avoid becoming a replacement for unit tests. I have seen some projects where actually people start to write a lot of tests at that level. So even like they don't have any unit tests, but they have a bunch of functional tests. That happen a lot, I think, in web application. I have some teams who actually have dedicated developers just for writing, for instance, Selenium tests. And they don't want to test everything at that level. And then it becomes hell because the tests at some point are ignored. Nobody cares about them anymore. You have 5 people writing only this test. So that's not the purpose of this functionality. You should keep it very, very, very light. And now, what was the status before Xcode 7 and UI test in Xcode? So as I said at the beginning, I started search at the beginning of my project. I saw the tools that were available, and then I saw that Xcode actually had already a tool for functional tests, which is this what is so-called this very original name UIAutomation. And what the UIAutomation does is basically recording the user interaction with the simulator and generating a script. That's what was before. This UIAutomation has some characteristics, some features. The tests, as I said, I generate recording the user interactions. You can also write tests on your own, but basically the main tool is the recording tool. They are integrated with Xcode as part of the profile tools. I mean, you don't find them in the normal testing tools or testing targets, but if you go to your menu profile, where you find other profiles too, like for memory or for CPU performance or counters and so on, there's what you find, and that already says what was the original intention of this tool. It was not really the approach of the unit test and assertions, but more like recording interactions to profile your application, to maybe find some memory leaks and this kind of more kind of performance. And that's what they put it in the profile tools. The tests are generated in JavaScript and written in JavaScript. I will not debate about if it's the trade-off of JavaScript and Swift, but the point is that is already a different language from what was the core language, and you develop the application. And then the second is like, can you go to has some disadvantages. The first one is the lack of IDE. So basically, this UIAutomation is just a script automatically generated. It will run, so it has a tool to run it. When it fails, you pretty much have no idea why it failed. There is a small log. It would say, like, I didn't find this element, kind of this undefined is not a function style. And that's all what you know. So it's really hard to test. Basically has no assertions. You can log when your whole script fails, you can say it fails or pass, and that's all what you can say. It's very unstable, and it's hard to integrate with the CI pipeline. So we actually use this tool, and we were able to integrate it with a pipeline, with a continuous integration pipeline, by kind of hacking the thing. You can, using a bash script, you can run an instruments a command to run this tool, and that's the way where we put it in the pipeline. I think it was worth at the end, even all the pain we had. With the time, I realized, and I said the value of the function that's equivalent for a project of this buy button in Amazon has not failed for the last 8 months. I think we have never had a bug with that, never ever. And when it has failed, it has immediately detected. So that's the value, right? So this is, for us, the most important function. And as I said, we have never had it broken in the whole project, almost the beginning. And now what's coming? Now what's interesting? What Apple came. They say that Xcode introduces user interface testing, ensuring that changes you made in code don't show up as unwanted changes to your user. That's the way they present it in this worldwide Apple Developer Conference some months ago. And what is coming? What are the new features? Now it's completely integrated with Xedit framework. That they say they already moved the approach from the tool. They are it's not the UI automation is still there in the profile, but the new tool is actually basically a library you can use in your test in Xedit framework. It runs like any normal test target. You don't need any extra configuration. You have, as you have Xedit framework, you already have by default all the assertion library, all the assertion possibilities. So with UI automation, what we did is build ad hoc assertions with JavaScript for testing, because there was no tool. Now you basically just take advantage of what you already had in unit test. It's built there. I will show you later how this is working. The tests are written in Swift or eventually in Objective-C if you are writing in Objective-C. It has a specific targets template. It means like they already are thinking more about testing. It still has this possibility of recording scenarios. You can actually start a recorder and start to interact with your application, and it will generate code for this interaction in Swift or in Objective-C. It has automatic screenshots for failing tests. The UI automation already included some screenshot functionality, but it looks like this is way much better. So basically, when a test failed, then it will take a screenshot of the screen at the point where the test failed. So UI test, the new UI test versus the UI automation and versus the other UI automation tools. Well, I think the approach is already good, what Apple is doing. Moving the UI tests are not a special test, they are just any other type of test, and they should be treated as that. So moving it from the profiles to the already included with the Xedit framework I think is the right approach. You have many more tools to find in actually what's the problem. So one of the disadvantages of the previous UI automation was that you knew that something failed, but you didn't know why it failed. So you have to invest much time in finding the cause of the problem. With the Xcode, it would be at least as good as Xedit framework. The UI automation probably will be deprecated. It's still there available in Xcode 7, but probably it will be out with the time. There are other automation tools out there. You say Kif. There's Appium, which is actually using the UI automation behind the scene. But I think the advantage of that this is a native implementation, it's a killer, right? So it's just very easy to use it. You don't need any extra configuration. The integration with the pipeline will already occur as any other test you already had. So it had pretty much positives. Just saying, I hope, and this is a hope, they invest more time in the stability. They don't make the same mistakes with the UIAutomation. It's a beta, right? So it's still in a stable. I hope Apple test their test framework because there are still some bugs that are pretty dummy bugs. So for instance, if you want to type something in a text field, it can fail because the simulator is not able to load the keyboard, right? Because you can in the simulator you can actually click on a text field and type without loading the keyboard. So you can do that, and when the application, the test starts, he complains, say, well, I don't have any keyboard type, and then it fails. And these kind of things should be very basic. And I hope this improves that, because I think that's the main feature. So functional tests in general are already very susceptible to be flaky, and that is the main pain. And if the framework itself, it's flaky, like this one, then it loses much of its value. So I hope with the coming features, they are improving this. Not still questions, although this is the next slide. I will make a quick showcase of what is working, or how this looks like. So this is the Xcode 7. And just, so if you go here, for instance, that was the old tool. So if you go to profile, you will still find here, it will take some time. It's a compiler, exactly. So if you go here, you still find, this is the old UI tool. So if you say, like, if you start this, then that's what you find. That's what you can also find in Xcode 6. And previously, I think in Xcode 5, there was also available. So in this, you can record, and then you say it's JavaScript. The new tool, you can actually find it. As I said, it's just a normal test target. So if you go to your project and you say target, then you have two templates, the normal iOS testing bundle for unit tests, and you have a new test template, iOS unit test UI testing bundle. So if you choose this, I wouldn't pick this because I already have one, but if you choose it, what it basically generates is a test target with a template, which looks pretty much like what you already know. So you have the class which extends to the exit test, yeah?
Can you go into presentation mode?
Oh, okay, sure.
Xcode preferences, font, colors.
Yeah.
No, right, and then presentation.
Where's presentation?
Yes.
It is okay, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just click on the sheet.
Yeah. So I will go back here. So as I said, it creates, a setup function, tear down. So it's a normal template. As any your test, I have here a demo app that I made for the presentation. I will run it. It's a pretty much a hello world app. So basically, you have first and second, and if you say, for instance, second, then it will, and say you mirror, it will mirror plus second. If you say first, so mirror first. So it's pretty simple. Yeah, and I want to test this right with the new tool. So I go to the test, and here I have my very simple test. So I just create an instance of the UXCUI application, which is the object will actually you will use to interact with your app. So it kind of follow this approach of the XPath of the web world. So you can go to the elements, and the element has some methods to find other elements, and you can click on them. So you can, for instance, see what is and this is already like a huge advantage. You can actually see the API, right? So this looks pretty normal, but actually in the previous UIAutomation didn't have anything like this. So you already have some sort of documentations in this way. So I will not do that. I'll remove this. Then I have a button, and I say, well, if I press the second button, and then I press the mirror, then I'm expected that the label is actually change into the text that I want, right? Here I'm saying mirror second is false, so he should fail. So if I run this test, yeah, stop. It will start the simulator. Now we will see it. Yeah, you see it. It will do the clicking stuff, and then it will fail because it's actually not the right string. But if I say then this, and I run again, go clicks, and then it's green. So so it's very much unit test, but you can already interact with your application. The simulator will start every time you run a test. So this is different from what you were doing in the UIAutomation before. So normally what we did in our test, we were writing really long tests because you start the simulator and you start to interact and do many things and testing several things. So this approach will also change because the simulator and it's set up and it started for every single test that you have. So then you have to combine the approach of unit tests and user journeys and thinking like, normally you want to test only one thing in your test, and normally you want to assert that that test is failing or passing for one specific reason. But in this case, it's already challenging. It's probably your button or the button you are testing is hidden in pages and so on. So you already have to go through the things. And probably there you can already test things in order to save time. You have to keep the trade-off and keep the common sense of not writing so long tests that you're not able to read it anymore, but also take the advantage that if you anyway have to go through different pages, maybe you can already assert different functionalities. Yeah, that's pretty much what I wanted to show you today. And yeah, I hope this helps you. And I don't know if there's any question. Yeah.
One question. This string which is used in the subscript, for example, a second, is this actually the label of the?
It's the label of the button. So so you say app the buttons, and he's actually saying, okay, give me all the buttons that you have. And
do you have any recommendations for example, if you have internationalized applications, or if you have like buttons with no label, or with two buttons with the same label?
Yeah, what you can use. You also have to be a bit careful with that is the accessibility label. So the standard IP way of handling IDs is like accessibility label. You have to be careful because, for instance, the static text, now I'm finding the static text by mirror, right? So I'm looking for that label in the application. If you use the accessibility label, it will overwrite this. So whatever you write on your static text will not taken. So if you write something in your static text, and you say, look for this test, you wrote, I don't know, red. But actually, the static test has accessibility label that it's named blue, then it will say, I don't find red. Red is not there. Because the accessibility label will overwrite whatever you write on there. So you have to be careful with finding that. But actually, that's kind of the recommended approach for this. So you just define a label, kind of an ID for your element, and then you can assert it, at least find it, even if you have different languages, for instance.
And I guess they support all kind of touch actions like dragging, etc.
They support pretty much all of the interactions. They already did it in the UIAutomation, and it was kind of the advantage of using a native tool. So for instance, drag and drop and these kind of things, you could actually do it. And it was a good thing in comparison with other tools which do not do this kind of interaction so good because they, of course, don't have full access to the API, to what is happening below the covers. Yeah. Yeah.
Can you carry on the state you end up at the end of this test to the next method, the next function?
I think basically not. What you can do is probably set up your state at the beginning, because what it's doing is like, since it's starting the simulator every time, so you will lose whatever you did before. Yeah.
So how does it handle like asynchronous? So I mean, generally when you press on a button, maybe it goes to the network or to the hard drive, or, to the flash drive, and that gets done in the background.
Yeah.
Do you have to like do a sleep wait or something like that? Or?
Yes, I honestly have not explored much the options for waitings. I know they exist. In the UIAutomation previously, you could insert delays. That was like a pretty much hard approach, but it's where you had it. Here you actually have this kind of wait for expectations thing that you already have with Xedit framework. So you can already run tests asynchronously. So it's yeah, but so you could what you could already test asynchronously in the unit test, you can also do it here. So you can already use it. And actually, with this version I have not tested this. This is the beta for. They already built in, or at least they say they already built in exactly that feature, waiting for interactions and animations, for instance. So this asynchronous functionality should be already there. I don't know exactly how it's working, and to be honest, I have not explored that. But I know they take that into account.
Just Maria, how does it feel for you as a QA, maybe to write tests in Swift? I know that a lot of QAs are pretty much into JavaScript, but this is like learning a new language, learning a new environment. Mm-hmm. As a dev, maybe, as an iOS dev, I would pretty go for this approach. But how do you feel with the role as a QA going with Swift test?
I don't make the difference in the language, to be honest, because I'm at least regularly not writing the code for the application. So it's just switching of the language. It's kind of interesting, jumping into a new language, but for me the difference is not there. The difference is just in stability on how easy it can be integrated with a CI, or that actually I don't have to configure a ton of things to start to test. From the language, I don't know, it's other language for me. It's interesting to learn it, but that's it. Yeah.
Quantify that. So how much in your team, or like how much time do you spend, like as a team in a QA team, on writing tests and just tapping on the devices? Or would just split be like 50-50?
No. It's it depends. Like at the beginning, I was doing a lot. Actually, I wrote a lot of JavaScript tests, because there was like kind of the kickoff, right? So we didn't have any tests for that. So kind of introducing, I ran a lot. In the last times, I have not been involved. Sometimes I'm fixing some flaky tests, but not a lot, to be honest. I've been doing some other tasks, doing some exploratory testing, but not only like analysis and so on. So pretty much depends on the phase of the project. I was involved a lot in writing tests, as I said at the beginning, like most of my time, probably, was only writing this test and trying the tool. And now it's like, okay, it's working. It's what we have it has its flakiness, but it's working pretty much. And now anyone in the team knows this and know how to work with it, so anyone can jump and fix it. And I don't have to do that, so I don't invest, to be honest, much time in the UIAutomation the last months. But we will see if they bring something good. Maybe I jump back to write code, some tests again. Yeah. So, if there is no more questions, then I say, oh, I still have a last slide. Yeah, the most important. Oh, this presentation mode doesn't let me jump into. Yeah, there is it. So, Dankeschön.
Cool.
So I can have my second word now.
Yes.
Thank you very much.